Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of the day that you are watching this. I'm Elder Sharif Ali II, and this is actually the first Zoom call that I'm doing and placing on these platforms. So I really appreciate the time that you're taking out to watch this video. So I want to put a little disclaimer right now. All right. This is a strong topic that I believe is necessary for men. And so I'm opening up the locker room for men to come inside. And I'm asking very respectfully that ladies, you will not come into the gym room. This is for the men only. And so if you are thinking about a brother, a friend, father, a cousin, an uncle, anyone who is a male influence in your life, if you will please share this video with them, because I believe it'll be an impactful topic. So to just get right into it, I have no suit, no tie. I'm not dressed up to the nines. This is real talk. If you can see, I'm in my bedroom right now. The door is locked. My children are downstairs. My wife's trying to keep them down there. And I just want to have real conversation. No face. This isn't Elder or Reverend Ali speaking. I'm just a man, and a black man at that, who wants to get to some answers. And I have a lot of questions. And what better way than to get to a solution? Then to, I guess, talk to people that you trust. So I'm saying that today because I have someone on the line who I trust with my life. So I'm going to just say a quick few things about him before he introduces himself. But this is, I'm going to say now, United States Army Reserves Sergeant Major Sharif Ali, who was actually recently deployed for a year overseas. And he went on track to produce two major career changes. One being he is the highest rank of an enlisted in the Army. And then also and I'm sure he'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe a few months back or in 2019 at some point, he reached his 35 years being in the military. And so this is a man of pure leadership, discipline, commitment, and he's a fighter. And he's a fighter in more ways than one. And we're going to talk about that and get into that very soon. I would be remiss to not mention that he is the son of Michelle Bowling, and he's originally from Buffalo, New York, now living in Ohio. At the time that he was, at the time that he received the title of a sergeant major, he was a part or a member, excuse me, of a Florida-based unit, which was the 641st Regional Support Group. And so they were the ones who were deployed to Iraq. And earlier in that year, he had the support of a combined joint task force, where I believe he was operating as a logistics officer. Now, let me stop there because I want you to correct me if I'm wrong. Was it logistics?
Yes, I was a logistics sergeant major for the 641st Regional Support Group, who had a historical mission to work under a combined joint task force mission in Iraq. And so we handled the logistics operations section. I was a senior enlisted leader. And might I say that there are several, there's a lot of sergeant majors out there. There's a lot of Black sergeant majors out there, more than a lot of people know. I grew up at a time where in the military, when I was on active duty, we didn't see many Black sergeant majors, and let alone African-American sergeant majors back in the day. I came in the military initially in 1984. And so I never set any sights on any track to become a sergeant major. It just kind of happened over a period of several years, as you already stated. In that 35 years, it's hard to believe that it's gone by. So it has been that long. Seems like it's gone by so quickly. And that 35 years that was a culmination of active and reserve time, and I had a distinct opportunity to serve in different capacities for different units, from a company to a battalion, from battalions to brigades, from brigades to a division level, and 1-star and 2-star level units. And so I was pretty proud to dawn on the rank of sergeant major after so long, at a time where I thought I was about to retire, and then they gave me another opportunity. To see some visions and make some aspirations come true, and then I went on ahead and accepted the rank of sergeant major.
So for those of you now who have been listening to that, you may know him or classify him now as Sergeant Major Sharif Ali. Some of you may just say Mr. Sharif Ali, but I have the privilege of saying Dad. And so today, the most important thing that I want to get out of this is a conversation really between father and son. And so there are some questions, like I said earlier, that I have, and quite frankly, I'm confused. You know, these times, I haven't really experienced times like these. I've been on this earth for 33 years. That's rather short, but this is a first of its kind for me. And so I know that my father has kind of seen this, this sort of protests and things that are happening over and over again. We'll touch on the pandemic, i.e. COVID-19. We really haven't seen anything like this ever before. But I just think that there's wisdom, there's knowledge, and there's understanding that he can impart unto me. And my hope is, my hidden agenda is that while he's speaking, you have an ear to hear. And especially Black men, that you would hear what this man has to say. This is a leader. This man has been in the trenches, and there's a lot of experience and wisdom behind, from his tongue. So I want you all to really pay attention, probably even take down some notes, get out your paper and pen, because we're going to get into this thing. So Dad, there's a lot of things that are going on in my head, and I can't really pinpoint it in one topic. So I guess I created this headline like a newspaper to kind of bait our men in, and just to talk about the pandemic within the pandemic, the state of the Black man in America. But my head is all over. So I just really want you to help me out here. I'm thinking the first thing that happens is COVID-19 hits. I don't really see any kind of threat or fear. I don't have any fear about it, because I see that's happening, in China and things like that. And I'm like, well, it's usually things like that happening over there all the time. And then it hits the US. And then I see it touch older people and younger people and babies. And then I get the call that you are going to the hospital, and then you are diagnosed with COVID-19, and you are on a breathing machine, losing your life. And at that moment, it became real to me. While you are sick, trying to fight for your life, I have to then call you to let you know that while you're fighting for your life, my grandmother, your mother, loses her life on earth. And so then there's fear, and then there's grief. And then after the fear and the grief, there's then anger. I don't even have time to process what's going on with COVID-19, with my children having to be at home. My wife and I are signing up to be full-time teachers, and I'm paying for them to go to school. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. We're trying to filter through that. I'm trying to handle business to make sure that you're okay. Then my grandmother dies, your mom, so Mimi is what we affectionately call her. So Mimi is, she's passed away. We're trying to handle her business together while you're still restoring yourself. And then don't really have time to grieve because now this whole thing with George Floyd happens, amongst other tragedies of Black people at the hands of police and those civilians who want to behave as if they're police. So now I'm upset because now I feel like I have to have a conversation. I have to have a conversation with my 7-year-old Black boy and let him know the do's and don'ts when you encounter a policeman. And I just feel like this time is so crazy. I shouldn't have to really prepare him for that. But I'm scared for him, as well as I'm scared for myself. So I'm going through all of these thoughts, and I don't really even know where to start. So really, I know that you're a great listener. So you have all those things that are going on through my head, and I'm just wondering what type of wisdom can you impart to me and someone who's feeling what I'm feeling?
So I think is I think I'll start by talking about a little bit about how coronavirus, and I want to spell out its name. I don't want to give it an acronym. I don't want to give it a short. I want to really spell out its name because it's something that's going to be ever ingrained in my life because I was infected by it. I felt like I was a victim of it, and it's really strange, son, because when I came back from Iraq, I was so excited to be back here in the U.S. and thought I would do some traveling. I went to Florida and then from Florida came back, and then I went, as you know, you and I met in Buffalo, New York, for your great grandmother, my grandmother, my father's mother. And I don't want to discount my father. My father died 5 years ago from pancreatic cancer. And he didn't even know he had it, right? So, and he was in great shape. So fast track 5 years later, we're at his mother, my grandmother's 99th celebration. And 99 years of living celebration. And she can, and your listeners can picture this. She is someone who can host a conversation like you and I are hosting today. That's how sharp her mind is, right? And you can attest to that, Lil Sharif. And so after coming back, we have 2 or 3 weeks later, I started feeling pain in my back, pain in my side. I started having cold flashes, hot flashes. I started just feeling like really, really sick, so much so that I had to go to urgent care. And then urgent care said, we're going to swab your nose to see if you have the flu. Right away, instantaneously, they say, you don't have the flu. So I didn't understand and didn't know what was wrong with me. And then they said, well, we're going to send you to testing to get your chest x-ray. But in the meantime, we want you to have stop and get some prescription medication, right? So got the prescription drugs, took them, and they didn't work. And the very next day, I was worse off than when I started. And so at that particular time, there was no other recourse but to go to the hospital. So in the hospital, in the emergency, they led me to believe that they were going to let me go the very next day, but that did not happen. So I think about a day later or so, or 2 days later, that's when I was diagnosed with not only double pneumonia with fluid in my lungs, but also coronavirus. And I could barely talk. My breathing was pretty bad. The pain in my chest, the pain in my back, my side. It was a very very eerie feeling, but I didn't realize how bad that I really was. I think the next day or 2 days later, my breathing. So to help everyone understand this, my breathing became labored. And what does that mean? I did not know, I'm not a medical person. I did not know my breathing was labor and what that meant. My breathing was labor, meaning that I wasn't getting enough oxygen to the vital organs of my body. Literally, your organs are shutting down. So the nursing staff and the doctors came in the room. I was resting. I thought I was, I thought I was resting. I thought I was just sleeping. Apparently, they noticed on the monitors that my oxygen levels had dropped tremendously. My heart rate had dropped rapidly. And then the labor breathing was happening. And then they rushed me into ICU. I remember talking to a nurse, asking her, later, what happened. All I remember was laying in my bed on a COVID floor, just being monitored. Now I'm in ICU, and at the time, son, I didn't have no mask, breathing mask, no breathing tubes or anything like that at that time. At that time, I was just without this. And then I end up at ICU, and the next thing you know, they mentioned something about intubation. Now I remember asking a nurse, what is intubation? She said, "Well, we're gonna have to put a tube down your throat, and we're gonna have to put you out," and which literally meant I would have no control, right? Which literally meant I would not be awake. I would be sleeping, and I would be in a induced, to me, that's like an induced coma, in
Right.
a sense.
Right.
So I had enough alertness and enough energy to tell them that I did not want that. And I said, and in my very, very weak tone at the time, and I recall it now, I don't want that. No intubation. They said, well, Mr. Ali, you have to. The doctor said that you have to. We have to get oxygen in you. And I said, no, give me a mask. Give me mask. Give me mask. All I can remember is your great grandmother, my mother's mother. She was on intubation before. She had tubes. And I remember visiting her in Buffalo, coming into town and visiting her in Buffalo at Sister Hospital, I think it was. And just to see that state of my grandmother, my mom's mom, at that time was just so overwhelming, just too much to bear. And then to know that they're saying that they're going to intubate me as well, that picture of my grandmother came to mind. And as you know, that Grandma Lala didn't come out of that, right? So I thought about that, and there was some fear factor involved. And I've never been afraid of anything in my life before. So, but there was a fear factor involved because I had no control once you induce me. I had no control once you intubate me. I have no control once I'm totally out of the picture. So I would have to literally have enough organs that were strong enough and rehabilitated enough while I'm out to just come out of the coma myself, right? And so I didn't want to succumb to that. And I didn't want to put myself in a position to have to rely on, good doctors or good nurses to walk by and see about me. So, as you had already stated, came out of the ICU after a while, getting a little bit better, and they did not intubate me. They put an oxygen mask over over my face and my nose, and I use that breathing. And then you called and told me my mom died, and I'm still, that still haunts me, because my mother had always prepared me from a child. If I'm not around, she used to say, if I'm not around, and you're young, you do this and you do that. You go stay with this person, you go stay with that person. And if you don't like it there, you go to this other relative and that other relative. And then as I got older, as a teen, if I'm not around, if something happened to me, you got to take care of your brother, because my brother's about 10 years younger than me. You got to take care of your brother. And I was like, oh, okay, Mom, okay, that's not something that you want to talk about and digest at the time as a grade schooler and as a teenager. But even in college, when I went to college, my mom always said, "Hey, I'm getting sick, or I'm having this, some ailments, some problems. If something happened to me, I need you to do this. I need you to do that." So my mother always prepared me, for the worst, and with the hope that things would be better. And so, but no one could ever prepare me for being helpless and in the hospital, suffering from double pneumonia and coronavirus myself, and then finding out my mother died. That was heart-wrenching. It's an undescribable feeling. It's overwhelming. And at times, you blank in and out, shoulda, woulda, coulda kinds of things. And I think the one thing that haunts me most is that when I was in the hospital, I was trying to reach for my phone, and I wanted to call my mom to let her know that I wasn't intubated. I'm feeling a little better and I'm on oxygen, but I was so weak, son. I was so weak, Sharif, that I said, I'll call her tomorrow. But tomorrow never came. And so when you talk about how has COVID affected me and how has it affected you, I think for most people, we should be asking the questions like, we need to know more about this coronavirus. Knowing is just part of the battle. So I'll yield the floor to you if you have something to say to that.
So with the knowing, one thing that kind of pops out to me is, I know you to, at least myself, I know you to be a man of like not having many fears, hardly any at all, none that I know of. That to me is like Superman. And so when this virus strikes you and puts you in that vulnerable position, my mind went to, wow, like this man really experienced his kryptonite. And so for the mindset, and again, for all the brothers that are listening right now, you've been trained to be a provider, a protector. If you were trained right, trained to be a provider, protector, a paramour. And so for you to have all of these strong positions and then get hit by something, you're unaware. I just kind of think of what's the psyche when Superman realizes that he, in fact, can be Clark Kent. And so what did that do for you in your head?
Yeah, I think that it was a wake-up call for one, because I want to also preface this with the fact that make no mistake about this. I was exercising. People might log on and they see this and they say, well, maybe he was not careful. Maybe he wasn't doing this or maybe he wasn't doing that. No. Sharif Ali was very careful. When they started talking about pandemic back in January, I was already exercising safe distances. When they were talking about things amping up here in America in February, I was already sanitizing stuff that I had never sanitized before. I was already, a neat freak anyway, and I already was cleaning more things than I ever. I was cleaning out things, getting rid of things. I was being that much careful. I didn't want to go out to public places. I didn't want to go to, one of the things I like to do is go to new restaurants when they first open up just to give them a chance one time, right? And I didn't want to do that. And so I think when you think about the kryptonite to Superman and the analogy you gave, we have to remind ourselves that, and I had to remind myself, hey, you can't play with this. This is not a game. This pandemic is real. And why am I being so adamant and so pointed about this, son, is that I need people to understand that there's no cure.
Wow.
I know they said this. I know the newscasters talk about it. I know that those people who have some experience in the medical field understand this, but I want the most layman person to understand that there's no cure, there's no vaccine, and there's no medications to prevent this very deadly disease. And the CDC says that the best way to prevent this kind of illness from being contracted is to avoid exposures to the virus. You know, how, right? For many of us living in the US today, that's a grave question. How? You know, because it's very, very challenging to do so if you got to take care of your family, if you got to go to work. Every time you step out of the door, you're at risk. And you're at risk at affecting other people. But that doesn't mean that I believe that my brothers and sisters should be staying home. I understand that there's a protest. This is an evil and a vicious virus that spreads from one person to the next by merely respiratory droplets produced when a person coughs or they sneeze or they talk and some spit come out or whatever the case may be. You know, you can contract this, you know, but it doesn't mean that I believe that people shouldn't be protesting. That's not where I'm going with that.
So here's my thing. And speaking about the protests, right? So we know all the things that kind of created this domino effect to young people and folks around my age and younger performing these protests and then riots breaking out. From a logistics perspective, with you being a man 35 years in the Army who has been trained, you're about strategy, what advice do you have to offer? And even aside from that, you've been through and you've mobilized, you've organized, you've done things for years, probably longer than I've been alive. And so what advice do you have to offer young men like me on the right way of protesting? What to do after the protest, like after the emotion of it is over? How do you sustain it and finally get to the change that you seek?
Yeah, that's a very important question. I don't know if any of us have the real answers. All we can do is strategize. I think protests are extremely important. They're imperative to have. And so just think about this. Let's think about this about strategic protesting and from a strategic perspective. Think about something for a moment. Last year in 2019, the whole year, tens of millions of people took to the streets in 114 different countries. You realize that? 114 different countries for various different issues. However, but think about this. For the event surrounding George Floyd, now we should have been protesting, and we should have been protesting like this for all the senseless deaths. The little boy in Cleveland that was shot, I think he was 9 or 11 years old. The young lady recently that was shot, she was a paramedic and in her own home, and the police officers or the detectives that burst in her home, they got the wrong house or the wrong address. So we should be protesting all over the nation for all these kinds of things. The young lady that was went into police custody for a traffic stop and wind up found dead and in the jail cell. All these kinds of things could have been avoided, but you should also be angry about it too. So getting back to thinking about in 2019, tens of millions of people took to the streets in 114 different countries about various different kinds of issues. But for the events surrounding George Floyd, millions took to the streets as well in 60 countries just based on that one tragic day, that one shin, that one ankle, that one knee, and so protests are very important, right? And sometimes they make a difference and sometimes they don't. At least they bring people to the round table of discussion. And I don't want any brothers and sisters, especially in the millennial generation, to get it twisted. Oftentimes we think the media is our enemy. We think some people think the media is our friend. The media is there to market and do what it does. Oftentimes the media can get some things right and they get a lot of things wrong, right? And what I mean, where I'm going with this is, don't let the media and don't let politicians water down your protests. Don't let politicians and the media say, well, there are hundreds took to the street in this city or that city, or thousands took to the street across the country. No, there were millions in 60 different countries, all together under the same umbrella of feeling the brunt, the pain, the anguish, the anger of police brutality, power, people taking advantage of power, supremacist types of attitudes and convictions. They were protesting because people are tired. So I don't have a qualm or deficiency about people protesting. I think they should protest and they should do it maybe a little bit more strategic and a little bit more organized. I think that you can protest and be in a formation. You can be 6 to 8 feet apart. I prefer 8 feet apart and not 6 feet apart, as the CDC and other groups say. There is no guarantee. There is no statistics out there. There is no guarantee. There are no experts out there that says that 6 feet apart from someone will save you. A mask and 6 feet apart will save you from getting affected from the coronavirus. That's not the case. But you can protest and be safer at about 8 feet apart, left to your right, 8 feet apart, different people, from the person behind you to the person in front of you. You can be 8 feet apart, right? And then you can still have the kinds of numbers and the kinds of effect, but you shouldn't stop there. While you're protesting, you should have people with like minds, like convictions, like beliefs, who understand the law, and have them be in negotiation tables at the round table of discussion for some of the things that you want to get changed. So we can protest all we want, and we can be out there, in the struggle, but we don't have those individuals who understand the law, who know the law, and who can articulate properly the message behind why we're protesting and what the struggle is all about, what our convictions are, and what we're tired of as a people. Then the protest sometimes will fall to the wayside, and that's not what we want to do. We don't want the memory and the messages to be cloudy and unclear, right? You got to have a vision, but you got to have a visionary approach.
I get that. So I want to get into some sticky mud, if you will. You are a professional military man. And I don't know how muddy that this may get you into the waters, but I just really want to know, as wearing two hats, as someone who is a military man but also being a civilian, what are your thoughts or your feelings even toward this whole George Floyd situation happening, and specific how the policemen handled the situation? Do you feel like I was wrong? Do you see how why it happened? Like,
I could, I think every one of us who's seen the videos, and I looked at various different videos to try to be fair-minded. I try to be fair-minded and objective about what I was seeing and what I was viewing. One video I saw him being escorted from the vehicle, being taken out of the vehicle and then brought to the sidewalk, where I thought that's a pretty safe zone for everybody involved, right? I think he slid down himself, maybe, or maybe an officer told him to take a seat. He slid down and he kind of sat down, I think, on the ground there against the wall. But at that particular time, from what I saw on the videos that I saw online and on television, he left from that spot to go to the street or on the other side of the police car. And then the next thing you see, him, a police officer, I don't even want to speak his name, putting his knee and his chin and everything on his neck, and you hear him saying, I can't breathe. But you also hear the other people who are witnesses saying, hey, get off him. He can't breathe. Can't you hear him? That kinds of thing. And then another view you see, which was shocking to me, do you see one officer standing trying to talk the public down when all they're trying to do is saying, hey, why don't you get your boy? Why don't you stop him? And he's focused on telling them to get back, right? Because they were probably getting nearer and nearer so that they can see, and they had their cameras going on their phone. Whoever came up with that invention never thought that it would never thought it would be utilized to unfold things like this, and I'm glad it does. But then on the other side of the vehicle, you see, two more officers holding him down, and the other one still with his knee on him. And so it doesn't make a difference whether I'm a military man. I think everyone should be appalled, because I'm thinking about the fact that I know what it's like to not be able to breathe. Being a corona,
wow.
I know like not to be able to breathe. I know what that felt like. So if I'm crying out, yelling out for help or assistance, I would hope somebody would obey me, right? I would hope somebody would come to my aid and obey me. And for George Floyd, that did not happen. So long before I was a military man, I was a black man, right? Long before I was a professional, I was a black man. Long before I came to Ohio, long before I went to college, I was a black man. And long before all of this, I come from a family of activists. So I have mixed emotions about it. I think it's something that could have been avoided. I think it's something I do believe that arresting the officers were proper. Now, whether or not the law will in the process during when they go to trial or go to court or whatever, whether or not the law says they did anything wrong, that remains to be seen. I believe that yes, I believe that they should have been arrested. I believe that a grand jury or anybody should have prosecute. I think a prosecutor should prosecute them. I think that they'll have their day in court, and we'll see what happens. And I think everybody, the world, will be watching.
So I want, again, for all the brothers that are listening right now, I hope there are many jewels and nuggets that are being dropped. I hope that you're really paying attention. Now, this next little zone that I want to go into is I feel like this is my lifeline. Father's Day is coming up on the 21st. By the time that I post this, it'll more than likely be the day before Father's Day. So tomorrow is Father's Day. And it's really a benefit and a privilege for me to be able to talk to my father, because I know a lot of men out there don't have that. But that, like there's this new kind of mindset that I've adopted, and the saying goes, there's no language of love between men. Like, how I was raised, and pretty sure it was for like that for you too. When me coming up, if you was to tell one of your friends, yo, bro, I love you, at the end of it, you have to say no homo, right? Because it's like, I can't be a man saying I love you without it seeming suspect.
Right.
So, like, there's no true language of love between men. And so that was something that I had a hard time even dealing with myself. And so as we have this time between you and I, and for the men, and I know, ladies, even though I asked you to stay out of the locker room, some of y'all's in this too, for the women that are listening too, what wisdom can you impart to me, for someone my age? Again, I'm 33. I'm a husband of 8 years. I have 3 children, 7, 4, and 2. I'm trying to figure this whole life thing out. But when I see things like protests, and I'm also a preacher, and of course, like, there's that pressure there too, which it should be, because I believe that preachers shouldn't just be behind the pulpit. They should also be out there with the people, fighting for and with the people for justice, just like Jesus. So my thing is, if you and I were on the phone, or if you and I were even doing a video call, there's nobody listening, and I'm like, Dad, from where I'm standing right now, you've seen this type of thing happen in some way, shape, or form. What part do I play as a man? What part do I play as a father? What part do I play as a person who was involved in my community? What would you say to me as your son? Son, this is how you should move forward after this pandemic, after these protests. This is what you need to teach. This is how you need to live. These are the steps you need to take.
I think, son, that you're already on that path road. When you introduce vehicles like this, platforms like this, you did say in the beginning that this was the first time that you're doing this, and I think that's a great start to get a Zoom call of brothers, right? And let the dialogues and conversations be real, all right? And let the dialogues and conversations be about what's really happening in our community, but deal with the facts though. Let's not deal with hearsay, all right? Let's deal with the facts, and then let's speak truth to power, and let's have a conversation, as men, to talk about some of the things that we might feel uncomfortable to talk about. And me, son, all your life. I'm your father, and I've been a very, and people that know me closely know I'm a very private person, especially when it comes to my medical life. I don't like people to know about any kind of thing dealing with me with medical. I don't like people to see me weak in any capacity. And for the most part, people have not. This is the first time in my entire life that I've ever had to experience something like this. But I'm willing to talk about it. I'm willing to share the experience because I want people to know that this is real. And so the same thing that is happening to the struggle of our people for so many years and so many decades, and those are real things too. Those are things that need to be actioned on. But I think it's important to start with conversation and dialogue. And then when you have conversation and dialogue, then it's almost like putting together a strategic agenda. You have a conversation and dialogue, whether it takes 3 weeks, 3 months, quarterly basis, or a yearly basis. You mount up all these conversations and dialogues, but in the end, or partway through, you have to have some agendas on where to go and what to do next, right? So you have these conversations, these vehicles like this, these platforms like this, and use the pulpit. I'm not a preacher, right? That's not me. That's not my style. That's you. That's your world, right? So use the pulpit and talk to the people and speak to the people and use the Bible, to your credit and to your credibility about not so much about protests, but about the sociological ill whims and evils of man and what they do to our people. Right. So you can talk about those kinds of things. You can get with some judiciary brothers, and eventually I'm pretty sure you'll probably lend way or give way to sisters joining the dialogue. Get with some judiciary sisters and brothers and talk about it from a legal perspective of the do's and do nots. And then I think protests should also be boycotts. I remember, I think it was, in 2016 or something like this, Congress gave an apology. I have to look it up. It was an apology, a referendum and memorandum that they said in Congress for apologizing for slavery, right? But they did not go so far as to say that the federal government had anything to do with it, or were they admitting that the federal government was at fault. And then also on the second page of that memorandum, it spoke to, and I'm paraphrasing, it spoke to the fact that, and I have to look it up and I'll get it to you. It spoke to the fact that, this memorandum does not suggest that anyone can sue for reparations. This is not a reparations memorandum or agenda. And so there is a House bill or HR 40. I think it's the HR 40. It's a bill in Congress that always gets shut down that talks about reparation. That's another conversation, another dialogue, right? So you got to get some people who are really, really in on that. I know a couple of brothers who used to be in the struggle with me when we were in college, when we were leading marches down here at Youngstown State University. We led one, a Rodney King rally. We also led a rally for the Million Man March when when back in the day, and you probably seen articles of that when you were a kid of me making the newspapers for that. So yeah, I've been in the struggle for quite some time, and I think that for your generation, it's time for us to still stay in the struggle with you, but yield the floor to your energies, because you guys, the millennium generations, you got a kind of a power and a kind of energy that that we didn't have when I was your age, and so I think that I'm glad I'm alive to be a part. I'm glad I'm alive to at least to help start the transitional dialogue about some of the things that need to happen. And in terms of what you can do specifically, use your pulpit. Times that you are off, I think you should, take your kids to historical sites and have dialogues and conversations about those sites. I think you should. I think our people need to read more about contributions of Black people and what we've contributed here in America. There's more things that people can imagine. I have books downstairs and on my bookshelf right now of all kinds of books from every professional and every African diaspora that you can name, just to keep myself reminded and aware that we've had some hell of contributions in architects and science and mathematics and all kinds of things. So those are some good starts that you can do with your kids while they're young, so that they can grow up and evolve and be conscious. Because each and every one of us, son, is in our metamorphosis as Black men, right? We're ever changing. I'm always changing. The older we get, they say older people, they get set in their way. Yeah, I'm a little set in my way on some things, but I'm still in my metamorphosis as a Black man. So, and we all are. And so I think it's important to share experiences as well as point the next generation in the direction and where you want them to go. The Bible speaks about that, right? Train a child in the way that you quoted. I don't know. What is the quote?
You train up a child in the way they should go, and when they're older, they will not depart.
Absolutely. And so that's the same thing when you talk about the struggle of our people, right?
Oh, wow. That I sincerely want to say that if there was never an eye that was laid on this video, that I am very full right now, because I can take this recording and I'm going to watch it over and over and over again. And also, this is something that I can show my son, and he can hopefully show his son, and it could just keep going over and over throughout the generations. Because, bros, listen, for all y'all who are listening, man, I can't stress it enough. It is so important to have male relationships. And I am one that is really stepping, like how my father said, we're always going through the metamorphosis. There's countless times that I had to have conversations with my dad. Like, hey, son, make sure you call me. Hey, son, you don't have to struggle with it when I have the answers. Hey, son. And the list goes on and on and on. And even myself, like, I'm just so used to keeping things inside or trying to figure it out myself. You don't really have to reinvent the wheel. But for those of you out there who kind of feel like me, who it's hard for you to connect, it's difficult for you to establish that relationship with another man for whatever reason. If you're in the weight room of your life and you're on that bench and you're lifting the weight of the world, yeah, you may be getting stronger, but you can get injured if you don't have a spotter. Today, my father is a spotter for me. If you don't have a dad, if you have a brother, if you have a friend, if you have a mentor, find somebody that can be your spotter. to help you with the weight, because they're going to tell you, hey, I'm not certified, I may not be a therapist, but I know that this don't look right. Let me help ease the weight off of you. And they can help you to get to that finish. Find that man. I want to end on this. It was actually a quote that I received from, well, no, not actually I received, that I saw from a news article that was written about a soldier, i.e., the man that you are seeing today, my father. This is what he says: every leader should know his or her limitations. 2.5 more years will be enough for me. I'll take off my rank and yield the floor to the next generation of soldiers. You may not be enlisted, you may not be in the military, but you're a soldier. You have something to fight for. And so, like, I couldn't have said it any better. You know, if you are an older man who's listening to this, get ready to get prepared to take off your ranks and yield the floor to, like my father said, that new energy. You know, sometimes I think we go through these battles where we're trying to hold power and control power. Power is meant to be disseminated, it's meant to be given. So I hope to God that if you are an older man, that you would take the shown advice and wisdom that my father is imparting unto me, that you can find a young man to give that to. And if you're a younger man, that you will have the ear to listen and to understand that, there's nothing new under the sun. That's what I know the Bible to say. There's nothing new under the sun. That means that there's knowledge that someone else has already learned, and you can get to tap into it. Just open up your mouth and be humble. Listen, brothers, I am happy that you logged on today. I'm happy that you were able to see a dialogue between father and son. I am pretty convinced after today that this won't be the last. My father always says, I would love to live a life of longevity. Longevity has its place, but in the event that that is not the road, I'm truly glad that I was able to have this conversation with my dad, before Father's Day. So to all the dads out there, happy Father's Day to you. To all the sons out there, honor your fathers. Your days will be long. And if you don't have one, find a mentor, find a father figure that can impart the wisdom to you, like how you saw in this video. Dad, I really thank you for joining me today, man. I really appreciate it. Do you have any last words that you would like to express?
Yeah, I just want to add. I wanted you to have the last word, but this time I just thought of something as you were talking. I remember when I was in college on my answering machine. This is when we used to have answering machines, literally. And so I was in college. I used to have this saying that I made up, and I always kept it, and I always shared it. I even shared it with you when you were younger. I even shared it with your sister. That as a people, we are in the process of becoming. But what we become is based upon the decisions that we make in our life. And so I'm reminded of that when you asked about what you could do, your generation, and you have kids now, and you have sons, right? They are also in the process of becoming. They're young, but they're in the process of becoming. And what they become is going to be based upon the choices that they make in their life. But right now, you and your wife can make choices for them, right? You just got to have them on the rightful path in the way that you want them to go, as your Bible says, with training up a child. So remember that we can always see the invisible, but we can do the impossible.
Dad, once again, I appreciate you. Brothers, I appreciate y'all for your time. Don't let this just go in one ear and out the other. Really take it to heart. And as you're marinating on everything that's been said, when you either wake up in the morning from your sleep or from your nap or whatever you're doing after this video, make sure that you go out there and make a difference. And you make a difference by just like little things like this. Each one, teach one. All right. Love y'all. Take it easy.
Love you, son.
I love you.